We've arrived. It's time now. Our way too early college football playoff field for 2025 into 2026. Y'all, here's the disclaimer I want to give. I don't like doing this. I don't think there's I don't think it's, I'm trying to think of the best way to say this. I'm not a fan of making a pick for a game that's going to happen at the end of January, nearly a year out. But as we sit here right now, I think it'd be a good exercise for us to take a pulse of this. This is going to change. A lot of this is picked off of vibes. If your team's not in this 12-team playoff right now, I wouldn't panic. I wouldn't get too upset. Our official prediction for this is going to come in August. I think we've given enough disclaimers. Make sure you're subscribed. College football year-round. Appreciate you being dialed in. This is both our playoff field and then our prediction for that playoff field. So we're pointing to the fence, swinging a big bat, taking aim. Here we go. My top seed in this college football playoff is going to be Oregon. Now, you look at their schedule, I think they got the best path. There's no Ohio State on the schedule. There's no Michigan on the schedule. I trust Dan Lanning. I trust Will Stein, the OC. I trust Dante Moore. More on him a little bit later in the show. But Oregon, man, just their path and the way it's going to ramp up for them, feel pretty good about the Ducks. All Dan Lanning's done since he's gotten there is improve every single year from a win total. His first year in the Big Ten, the toughest conference in college football, they win the whole darn thing and go undefeated. Got to handle the bye the right way, but I like Oregon a lot. They're my top seed. At number 2, I told y'all earlier in the show, I think Texas is an absolute wagon. I have Oregon winning the Big Ten. I have Texas, as we sit here right now, winning the SEC. I love Arch Manning. I love the defense even more. I think the way that they're going to be a just chew nails and spit them out kind of operation in Austin this coming season is going to be bully mode. Like, it's funny, when they got to the SEC, our question was, well, hey, can they match up on the line of scrimmage? Y'all, they can match up on the line of scrimmage. They can do more than that. They can win the line of scrimmage. And I think they will win the line of scrimmage. And I think that the way that they're built around Arch Manning with what he brings with his legs is going to make a massive difference. And I think Steve Sarkisian gets over the hump. I said it earlier in the show. I'll say it again. Good coaches find a way to get over the hump. Steve Sarkisian has gotten into semifinals 2 years in a row. Sometimes you gotta kick a few times to get the door on the ground, to get it off its hinges. He's kicked the door twice, haven't gotten through just yet, but I'd be surprised if Texas and Sark don't make some real noise, not just making the playoff, but making a run in the playoff in this upcoming 2025 season. Worth noting, too, my colleagues, Andy Staples, Ari Wasserman, have both picked Texas to win the whole thing. Are we going to go for all three of us? Remains to be seen. At number 3, I got Clemson. Hey, don't look now, but Clemson may be back, y'all. This would make Clemson back-to-back ACC champs. This would make them back-to-back college football playoff, attendees. They will have a better roster, I believe, in all but 2 games they played this season. Those 2 games where they will have a good matchup from a roster talent level is LSU and South Carolina. On paper, as we sit here right now, I see 1 loss in ACC play. Win your conference, you're in. I think Clemson with Cade Klubnik going into another year under Garrett Riley, the weapons, the defense, all those things. I love Clemson this year, y'all. I was a little bit cool on them the last couple of years. I love Clemson this year. They're my ACC champ. They are my 3 seed in this playoff. Now, number 4, the Valley has been activated. Sam Leavitt is responsible for that. Jordan Tyson is responsible for that. Kenny Dillingham responsible for that. No K-State on the schedule. You're at Iowa State, which is, I think, maybe your toughest game on your whole slate. I love ASU this year, man. I think Sam Leavitt, you lose Cam Scatterby, that's super tough, but Sam Leavitt is built for it. He's got those broad shoulders. I think he carries ASU to the playoff for the 2nd year in a row. Back-to-back now, Big 12 champs. So that's our top 4 seeds. Let's talk about the at-large, because this is where it gets a little more interesting. I have a really difficult time not seeing Georgia in the college football playoff, especially after Kirby Smart has 2 years where he hasn't won the national title. I think you see motivated Georgia. I think you see a more Georgia-ish Georgia, if that makes sense. I think there'll be a real identity. Now, who's playing quarterback? Great question. But I think Georgia is your 5 seed in this playoff. Now, at number 6, Notre Dame's going to be in the mix. Notre Dame's making the playoff. And Cato made a great point earlier when we were talking about Notre Dame getting ready for the show. Nick Wright is someone that we have a ton of respect for on this program, a guy who does a lot more NFL talk and pro sports talk, does a great job for Fox Sports. He has coined the AFC title game as the Arrowhead Invitational for the Chiefs. Notre Dame might just have the South Bend Invitational because it feels like every single year, as long as Marcus Freeman is out there, they're going to host a playoff game, just the way that it feels. They have a tough start to the year potentially with the Miami and A&M from a schedule perspective, but like if you just split those two, should feel pretty good about your chances. Just got to avoid the landmines in a USC and a Syracuse. I love Notre Dame next year. Speaking to someone close to Notre Dame heading into next season, they think their roster a year removed from the national title game is even better than the one that competed for a national title. So you got to figure out quarterback. That's got to hit, but I think they'll be a little bit more of a vertical presence team in 2025, and I think Notre Dame is absolutely going to be in the college football playoff moving into next season. Now at number 7, we were a little bit critical of their defensive coordinator hire, and Matt Patricia. They're still making the playoff. The Ohio State Buckeyes, yeah, you lose both your coordinators. Yeah, you lose Will Howard. Yeah, you lose both your running backs and some key pieces on defense. It's still the Buckeyes. It's still an Ohio State outfit that's going to have more talent than just about everyone they play. I love Julian Sain. I think he's your starting quarterback next year. Super accurate. He's going to do a great job getting the ball to the best player in college football, which is Jeremiah Smith. And just for good measure, you also, in my opinion, have the second best player in college football, which is a Caleb Downs. So the schedule now is going to be pretty intense. You don't play Oregon, but that's pretty much the only break that you catch. You open with Texas. You're at Illinois. You're at Wisconsin. You play Penn State, and you're at Michigan. So it'll be, they're going to earn their way over there. Don't get it twisted, but I do think that Ohio State, with their roster, with Ryan Day and what he has proven he is now as a head coach definitively, I like him at 7, and they'll absolutely be in the playoff. At number 8, you got Penn State. Now, for them, man, it's another 2-game season. It is. It's Ohio State, and it is Oregon. That is the 2-game season for them. All right, so it's worth noting here, I think 10 wins for Penn State gets you in the dance. That's not really saying anything that controversial. James Franklin, 6 of the last 9 years, he has had a double-digit win season. And of one of those years, they hadn't have double-digit win seasons in the last 9 years. It was a COVID year where they didn't play double-digit games. So, needless to say, the guy's extremely steady. Penn State has pushed all their chips to the middle of the table, going to land into Jim Knowles and bringing back a Drew Aller. Like they're going all in this year, man. So Penn State at 8, hard for me to see them not in this playoff here in 2025. They're following that blueprint now that Michigan had a couple years ago, that Ohio State had last year. Bring key guys back, make key acquisitions in the offseason. We'll see, but I like Penn State a lot heading into this playoff. At number 9, I've said it before, I'll say it again. I love LSU. I do. Now, it'll be a dogfight to get in, but I think they're a playoff team. I love Nussmeier. I love Brian Kelly. We spoke about LSU a lot already this live show, but LSU, they're 1,000% in my mind going to be a playoff team heading into next season. If it's about quarterback play, they're going to have a chance to make some noise in this playoff. I'll leave it at that. At number 10, South Carolina. This is a Lenore Sellers pick for me. I love the way the schedule matches up. They should be 5-0 heading into their first game in October. And you know this about Shane Beamer, man. His teams rather play their best ball in October. You got Cocktober, you got Crowember. Lucky for South Carolina, that's when their biggest games are. So I'm not saying they win the SEC or go unblemished or anything like that, but if South Carolina can just be in striking distance, I think Lenore Sellers is good enough to put the team on his back and carry them into the playoff. They missed it last year, not this year. South Carolina makes it in. They are the 10 seed. Now, 11 and 12 is where it gets tricky for us. At number 11, or 11th seed in the college football playoff, I did my best to account for some of the madness that we just get in this sport every single year. And I couldn't help but think, what accounts for madness better than putting in not one, but 2 teams from the craziest conference and the craziest sport in the world, which is, of course, college football, which is, of course, the Big 12. At number 11, our 11th seed, I got Kansas State. I like Avery Johnson moving into year 2, Dylan Edwards, Chris Kleiman. You know what Kansas State's going to be defensively. I like Kansas State a lot. Now, it might be one of those things where they have to make it to the Big 12 title game with only 1 loss, which that first game against Iowa State in Ireland is going to be a dogfight for them, but I like Kansas State a lot. I like Avery Johnson, and I think that ultimately they have enough juice on that roster to find their way into the playoffs. So little bit counterintuitive, but so is having a G5 team get a bye in the first ever 12-team playoff, and that happened as well. Now, our 12th team, our 12th seed, is going to be UNLV. The Fighting Dan Mullins, Alex Orji transferring over from Michigan to UNLV. I wouldn't be surprised if this spot in the Mountain West in general, or this spot in general came down to the Mountain West Conference title game. Could definitely see UNLV Boise State rematch, but we'll go ahead and ride with Dan Mullen and the folks out there in Las Vegas to get it done and find themselves in that 12th spot. So let's recap the field here before we go through the playoff. I got Oregon at 1, Texas at 2, Clemson at 3, Arizona State at 4, our 4 highest-ranked conference champions getting the byes. And then the at-larges, you got Georgia at 5, Notre Dame at 6, Ohio State at 7, Penn State at 8, LSU at 9, South Carolina at 10, K-State at 11, and UNLV at 12. Okay, so at the end of this thing, we're going to have a graphic we flash up for you that gives you the full results of this college football playoff, so hang with us. I'm going to do my best here to try and paint a verbal picture for you of how this bracket we believe is going to shake out. Let's start with the 8 versus 9 seeds playing in that first round. We'll go first round, then we'll go to second round, and we'll obviously work our way through the bracket, but roll with me here. You got Penn State versus LSU in round 1. So Happy Valley, 2 years in a row, hosts a playoff game. Maybe you get the night game this time. Either way, it'll be a whiteout sort of conditions for the folks out there in Happy Valley. Y'all, I like LSU just too much in this spot. I think LSU gets it done on the road. Garrett Nussmeier proves why he came back. Brian Kelly proves why he got the job in Baton Rouge, and they win that game. They advance to the next round. They'll play Oregon. More on that a little bit later. Move to the bottom of the bracket. Other first-round game, Georgia, UNLV. I love Dan Mullen. I love everything about this UNLV team, and I say this without us having even seen them play a game yet. However, it's Kirby Smart. I don't think he loses his first college football playoff game 2 years in a row. Obviously, last year they had a bye. I don't see that happening this year where they drop their first playoff game in this 12-team field. So they win that game. Then you got Ohio State, South Carolina in the 7 versus 10 matchup. I want it to be a victim of the Lenore Sellers hype and take South Carolina here. I think there's too much talent across the board for Ohio State. So I think they win that game, and they advance. They'll play Texas. Last first-round game, Notre Dame. Remember, the South Bend Invitational, just every single year. Hey, what's up? Yeah, move finals again. We're going to play another college football playoff game. Snow, sleet, hail, doesn't matter. We're hosting a playoff game. We'll cash in on all the revenue we get from that playoff game, mind you, and they'll play Kansas State in the first round. I just think Notre Dame is going to be a team that is such a difficult out every single first round. Because remember, they get their own bye from conference title weekend. Like, they got a full week to get healthy now before they even have their first game in the college football playoff. And not because they lost a game they weren't supposed to lose, because they just played their 12-game schedule. Hey, we got that NBC money. We're going to go ahead and sit at home and watch y'all play conference title games. And I think they show up and get it done against Kansas State. That'd be a great game, though, just so we're all on the same page. So that sets up, in the next round, you got LSU and Oregon, ASU and Georgia, Ohio State and Texas, and Notre Dame and Clemson. So LSU, Oregon, I like Brian Kelly. I like LSU. I just think Dan Lanning's going to have this team dialed in. I don't think they lose 2 years in a row, their first college football playoff game. Same thing I said about Kirby. Imagine being in that locker room or being in that meeting room the weeks leading up to your first playoff game after the season before, where you had that massive bye and everyone's like, okay, did Oregon, get too rusty or what have you? Dan Lanning will have them ready to play. I think they beat LSU and they advance to the next round. Arizona State and Georgia, call it SEC bias, call it, ranking bias when it comes to stars, whatever you want to call it. I just think Georgia's going to be too talented to lose to ASU, so I think they get that done and they advance. So you will have Georgia playing Oregon as your first semis of our 2025 playoff field. On the other side, you got Ohio State, Texas. This is a tricky one because remember, Ohio State and Texas will have already played each other one time during the regular season to open this 2025 season up. A little bit tricky. I think that it's probably worth noting whoever wins that first game might be a little bit at a disadvantage to playing the next time. So without tipping our hand too much on what we think is going to happen that first week of the season, I will take Texas to beat Ohio State off of some rest. And I think Sark gets over that, not get over that hump, but avenges the loss a season ago in the semis to Ohio State. Who do they play? The winner of Notre Dame and Clemson. I said before, I love Notre Dame. Y'all, this year, I love Clemson more for all the reasons I already mentioned. So Klubnik, the weapons, Dabo getting his lick back. I think Clemson gets it done. They beat Notre Dame, and they advance to have a rematch of the first round of last year's college football playoff against Texas. So Oregon, Georgia, Texas, Clemson, those are your semifinal matchups. Quick thought on this. How awesome would that top four be? If you had that set up between Oregon and Georgia and Texas and Clemson, those would be, just creme de la creme when it comes to matchups. Back to it. I think Oregon beats Georgia. Remember, the first time that Dan Lanning coached a game at Oregon, it was in Atlanta against Georgia, and Kirby Smart absolutely just thrashed his Oregon squad. And after the game, Kirby Smart took the podium and said, "We won this football game because we had better players than Oregon." And Dan Lanning would never say this, but he knows it too. Y'all, it's a different Oregon team since Dan Lanning took it over. There's no longer a talent gap between Oregon and Georgia. In fact, I think you could argue Oregon might have as good, if not a better roster than Georgia going into next year. I think that happens in the game. I think we see that in the game, and I think Oregon beats Georgia. They punch their ticket to play for the national championship. Now, who do they play? Is it Texas? Is it Clemson? I still just think the trenches of Texas and the way that Steve Sarkisian has built that operation is too heavy duty and too tough to drop that game before the national title game. I think they beat Clemson, and they find themselves playing for all the marbles in Miami late January against Oregon. Now, this game is going to be awesome. I'm okay with either storyline, whether it's Lanning, whether it's Sark, both guys that are trying to capture their first national championship. I think it's Oregon. And now, roll with me here. Before last year's playoff, I picked Oregon to win the whole darn thing, and I requested our graphic, and Marina, who's a great job for us here on graphics here at On3, replies back lightheartedly, "You're going to make the same mistake again? You're going to pick Oregon again?" Obviously, she threw in a couple JKs after the fact, but it's a fair point. Are we really going to fall victim to Oregon for another year where we think they're going to do all these great things and they don't get it done, and then we're sitting here just with our hands folded saying, "Man, can't believe we got again." Y'all, I trust the trend. I trust Dan Lanning. Every single year, all he's done is improve and build and work, and I think that pays dividends this year. Now, Sark has done the exact same thing at Texas, but I really believe that Oregon and the way they're going to be, I think, pretty fresh heading into this playoff with their schedule, I think they end up getting it done. I think they're your national champions. So take a quick look at this graphic. That's if you weren't tracking, that is a full picture as to how we see this playoff shaking out. That Final Four, again, we think would be awesome if we got that matchup, or we got that mix of matchups. Seeing some of these home playoff games too, a home playoff game in Athens and another home playoff game in Happy Valley and South Bend and Columbus. Very interesting to note, 3 of those 4 playoff games in the first round, all of those venues would be the second time they host a home playoff game. So those specific venues and those specific schools, congratulations on collecting some more greenbacks. But there you have it. We've called our shot. We think Oregon, subject to change here, as we sit here in February, will be your national champion when the confetti drops in Miami. I cannot stress this enough. That picture, whether it's Oregon winning the national title or not, that field is going to change. Our rankings will change. Our feelings around it will change. But we'll give you another prediction as we sit here in February, moving into August. Probably maybe late July. We'll see how we feel about it. When we have a more specific prediction after spring games, after the portal, we will obviously call our shot. So if you didn't see your team in there, we'll talk about them here in the future, and we'll, at the very least, give you an explanation as to why we don't think your team's in there right now. And if they end up making it in, we'll talk about them when they are in that 12-team playoff here in 2025.